So let's get on with the event. I'll introduce you now to Steve Litchford, who's our COO from Codurance. Hi. Sorry, one last thing. Sorry, thanks, Steve. So during the event, if you want to download Slido using the QR code, feel free to submit questions. We'd love this to be as interactive as possible. So submit some questions during the event, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So I'll leave that QR code up. And over to Steve.
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for coming. We're going to talk today about digital transformation. They've got quite a reputation for failure, depending on what you read. The Slido thing, you just go on there and ask any questions you've got. You can upvote questions as well. So if you're on the app, you can upvote stuff if you think it's really important. If you can't get that to work, just stick your hand up and we'll come to you. So we all know what technology's like. So nice to meet you. My name is Steve Litchford. I am the COO of Codurance. And I'll introduce you to the panel now. So maybe we'll start this end. So we have Rachel here, who I wrote down a job title. So she's the head of engineering, test and delivery for Flutter. Then we have Paula, who is senior delivery manager at Axiologik. We have Mo, who is the head of software engineering at Laza. And then we have Sandro here, who is the co-founder of Codurance, and kind of well established in the world of software craftsmanship, and wrote a book on software craftsmanship. So I think probably a useful thing to talk about. The digital transformation is one of those kind of can be quite a vague phrase. So maybe we start off with trying to get a bit of scope just for this conversation. So you don't necessarily need like the Oxford Dictionary definition of digital transformation, but let's just try and just scope it for this conversation. So who wants to try and take a stab at what digital transformation is?
Okay, go first. For me, is any set of initiatives that you take as an organization essentially to become more effective in value delivery. Now, sometimes that involves the whole organization. Sometimes that involves a function within the organization or a set of functions within the organization. But the main purpose of it for me, it should be oriented around the value that you would deliver at the end of it. That's what you want to be focusing on.
I would agree with that. In terms of kind of exploits and explore, I would say very much comes into that explore side. So not the known quantities, the BAUs, they're continuing on, but thinking about new value to your customer, thinking about innovation, creating that new space, and that a little bit that blue sky thinking as well for me.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is digital implies the use of technology or the focus on technology. So I would just add that and read what you both said.
Can I start going off script already?
Yeah, you go for it.
I don't even like the term digital.
Oh, really? Could have told us that 6 weeks ago.
The reason being is that, it involves technology to evolve organizations and react to change. How is that different from things companies start doing that 20 years ago, right? So this thing, because it's always a continuous evolution, we're always reacting to change anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like about the term is it makes it a big thing for something that should be just a continuous process that should have been started a long time ago. It should be just a way that companies work. It's constantly reacting to change, understand where they want to go, and should not be a massive thing. And using technology to make change is not a new concept. And that's why one of the reasons that I don't like the terminology and everything that comes with it.
So we're not saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think I'm hearing is we're not saying that a digital transformation is necessarily a whole organization. It could be a small part of an organization, could be a whole organization. And it's just anywhere where we are that perhaps is not using technology now, that is evolving to use or more technology or any at all.
Different technology.
Or a different technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like on-prem to cloud, I would consider that digital transformation. But I think what you're saying is really interesting about it should be an evolution. I think in an ideal world, absolutely it should be. But when you've got businesses who've got, and it's kind of my example, so you give me, but a massive on-prem estate, and your aspiration as a business is to go into the cloud, I guess my question back to you, based on what you just said, is how would you do that if you applied your evolution approach, if you had that big thing that you then needed to move into somewhere else?
Well, not everything needs to go to the cloud as a priority. So the way that we normally go about is, and this is why I think that there is these failures, because they try to make a very, very big effort to change everything at the same time.
Well, yeah.
And most organizations can barely organize a day-to-day job. They struggle with business as usual. And all of a sudden, so like, we're going to spend like 5 years, this 5-year plan, we're going to change everything. And then, for example, the example you gave is, for example, what are the key applications or things that we want to do in the next 2 years? Not 5, 2. Okay, so according to, we want to bring a new product to market, or we want to get a biggest market share for this thing, or we're going to try whatever they want to do with that. They might have multiple products or multiple areas within a single product, but there is one area in specific that will receive far more attention than others. That's where we start from. So, well, let's take that one, and that one we need to, why do we need to migrate to the cloud? Is it like scalability? Is it like security? Is it like operation inefficiencies? Then you have a very clear idea of what problem you're trying to solve, and then it's like, well, let's focus that one. And once we focus that one, then we look at everything else as part of the real estate. It's like, what is the next one in priority? And is it priority over other things as well? And then you do a continuous improvement, but you do that through value and stuff.
I mean, I'm coming from a totally different background to you guys, because you're all technical, and I think I'm the one non-technical on the team, I was on the panel, sorry. So in terms of thinking about that underlying operating structure, I think one of the things that really strikes me, particularly working with central government, is that we have to go through digital transformation for survival, irrespective of where you sit in terms of industry, what sector you come from. But in terms of our operating processes that sit underneath that, we haven't actually evolved very much since the post-industrial revolution. So we still very much work on separating the thinking from the doing. So when we come into, I know when I particularly go into transformation programs, well, we were just having this conversation earlier where everybody will throw employees on a Scrum course and then go, we're agile, that means no more planning. And it's like, hang on. So just overlaying ways of working onto an existing organisational structure doesn't work. So I think change and evolution has to start at a much more foundational level for me. So before you even think about the technology, think about what it is that you're trying to do. And if you're in an organisation such as central government where there is an element of BAU, you've got to keep the lights on, you've got to continue doing the things that continue to keep the world turning. Then look at yourself as an ambidextrous organisation where you will have a specialist, sort of separate yourself off from your traditional hierarchical structure, and then have an innovation sector. So you will have a team that is purely based around that collaborative, innovative working. So but they've got the space to be able to do that. And I think for me, that's a bit of it stymies progression. If you're trying to keep the lights on as usual, sit within this hierarchical structure, by definition, you cannot innovate because you don't have the space to do that. So I think for me, that's one of the really key messages. One of the key things I would say I've learned over a good 10 years is looking at that first.
I think I completely agree with that. I think part of the title talks about the failure, and I'm sure we get into that. But one of the things I definitely experience is that in terms of transformation and what do we want to get out of it? So what you want to get out of it at the end of the day is that value. That's what you want to be focused on. Unfortunately, what happens is that is exactly what you described as an example. I describe that as a framework fallacy. Yes. We say that, we've learned to do Scrum, but Scrum is a way of telling you how to, again, continuously, like maybe deliver value. But the value bit gets kind of like pushed to the side, and we do the games, and we get really good at doing the games, but the purpose is forgotten, and that's the end game. Essentially, it gets sold as now the whole organization is agile, whatever agile is, and that becomes the end of the transformation, if you like. And then when you do a comparison, a good way of also understanding whether you've succeeded or not, you want to see that post and pre whatever you did, how much extra value you managed to deliver. And if the amount is not big, I think the effort should be categorized as failure, because it takes a lot of effort to take the whole organization to do that and then continue with BAU as well. And we can burn your people out as well as a result.
So maybe this is the reason, like, that I'm very skeptical about those transformations. It's because of the agile transformations.
Yeah.
Right, because like I started in the mid-90s, so I went through the whole waterfall, unified process, and then the whole agile thing, and so on. And as you were saying, I remember in those agile transformation era where every company, I want a bit of that, I want post-its, I want all this kind of stuff, right? So, and then the goal was to adopt Scrum. So the goal was like, oh, what are we transforming? All our teams need to follow a specific agile methodology. So yeah, but what do you want to do with that? I don't know, but 85% of our teams now are having retrospectives every Friday. It's like, and this is getting to, and this happens to all the large-scale technical transformations as well. Because not only digital, like technical transformations. My background comes from like large organizations and stuff, and I've always been in consultancies as well. So, for example, in some banks, they had this thing about we need to have APIs to everything, and we want a data lake as well. And then you are in like a 3-year black hole program to create this data lake that we even have a joke that it becomes a data swamp. That we don't know, we need to pump data into the lake, right? And who's going to consume that? No, but you need to do there. And the digital, in a way, is the same. Well, I mean, I'll say that every company does that, but we see traces of the same. We need to migrate all our state to the cloud. We need to do that. Right, but like what is the problem you are trying to solve with this initiative?
Again, I just I'm going to keep talking about central government. Sorry, it's getting a bit battering today, but that's just been my last year's experience. It just joined quite a complicated programme whereby there was lots of stuff happening, but nobody could tell me why it was happening. It was just, well, we've been told that we need to do digital transformation. So coming back to your point, so that means obviously migrating to the cloud. That means changing what we're doing. Like, really? Is that what it means to you? So let's take all of your backlogs, let's take all of your features, let's look at common objectives across them, and you've got to tell me what the value is of doing that before we'll give you a priority decision. And actually, when we looked at that backlog, about 40% of it was processes, it was people. It was nothing to do with technology. And I had this great TA who's, there's a case management system whereby we could get some data back, but it took us 2 hours. And we're talking about processing people here, and the SLA is 1 hour and 40 minutes. And it's like, but we get it on email at the minute within 10 minutes. So whilst you can do it in that system, that doesn't mean we should do it. And I think there's always got to be that sanity check for me of why we're doing it. Is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do now? And again, coming back to a proof of concept, can we do something that gives us 60%, 70% of the value, and then accept the fact that we will then iterate in the future? But I think that's a really difficult message when people are used to getting their proof of concepts, and then they find the proof of concepts and their interim solution is still there 5 years later. So I think that can sometimes really help, stymie our progress again in terms of transformation.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and then Rachel, you mentioned something earlier as well around the kind of innovation thing, and just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. But you should. There's certainly a case for, I think, looking at new emerging technologies, and can they be a useful thing to us? It shouldn't. Or what I'm suggesting is perhaps it shouldn't drive a digital transformation because we have ChatGPT or we have blockchain available now. We have more cloud.
So that's again, it's like a common failure that is like following trends without any good reasons, right? It's just again understanding and everybody gets it wrong. It's really scary. So again, we can give an example of all of these things. Now we've got fun with AI as well, so I'm sure that would be great. We do another round, right? We again, you're gonna have to start with the problem. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And the other aspect of it, again, what's pointed out is that at the end of the day, you need to have an agreed set of outcomes in your organization to say that these are the outcomes for this specific reason we're trying to achieve. And then what you're doing is you then organize your activity around that, and then you choose the set of technology that could help you to get you there. And looking at, again, the irony of all of this is that if people pay attention, there's 2 pages if you go to Agile Manifesto. The first one is the value, the second one is principles. I think the principles usually gets kind of like people don't pay attention to that. You have to memorize the first one if you're doing kind of like a Scrum training and you want to pass that, you need to memorize that. But there are 12 principles as well. One of them is about simplicity, right? So what's the least I can do to deliver the value I can deliver now to the people I want to serve? So we'll end up becoming more activity oriented rather than outcome oriented. And we talk to different people and they're just busy doing things, and it's not their fault. The organization is not leading that to get people to focus on the outcome and making sure they're asking the right question, they're coming up with these sort of solutions that really aligns with the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And you make sure your technology choices then also on your engineering practices are also aligned with the outcomes you want to deliver. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just before you go, just like, although I have my skepticism with digital transformation, but more because like I think that they were, the word that bastardized in a way. For example, for small things like, oh, we need to adopt new technologies. Yeah, great. This should be a constant for any organization. And why would you do that? Well, because like maybe we can be more efficient in doing so, or solve some operational issues that we have, or manual process, so on. So that technology evolution, for me, is nothing special. It's just something that should just be there. So calling that digital transformation for me I think that it's not a great thing to do. But there are, to be fair, there are very interesting cases. For example, one of probably the first ever and most famous case of digital transformation was Amazon. And that goes back to early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, where they went from an online bookstore to become what they are now. They sell in anything, and then they create AWS and cloud. And so that is a series of significant digital transformation. They never called that then.
No.
Right? So, and then, for example, during COVID, so companies having to adapt from physical stores to going online. So when there is a significant impact in the business, where the business is shifting focus and using technology, that for me is a more applicable situation for the name digital transformation. That's a proper transformation. It's not like just a small continuous evolution because now we need to bring to the cloud or adopt technology X or Y. So that's where I was kind of from.
I think if you're in a situation where you're going from one step and the next step is significantly different, so you're not doing that iterative change. The most important thing for me, actually, having been through this in the last 3 years, is spending enough time planning. And I think that one of the pitfalls that I've experienced when people use the word agile is that they then use that as we don't need to plan. Now, what that means on a bigger scale is you sink your development time into just trying to design a process. So you might have 4 different teams, and 4 different teams all trying to solve the same problem because you haven't focused on how do we solve the problem and get the right people in to work on that problem, and then ask everybody to follow that pattern, and therefore minimizing your delivery time. Because as soon as you go into delivery, you're asking for we should be asking for specific outcomes that you can measure. But what you don't want to be doing in that period of time is trialing approaches, innovating, because that's not where the value is in that stage. So I think for me, it's about that enough planning. And what I'm not suggesting is like years in planning. Just
this is what I would ask. Like, how do you, at which level of planning you were talking about, so I understand you?
So, I mean, if you are all going to try and move something from one place to another, and you're asking very specifically for, like, it might be, we're going to move this code base and we're going to move it into a different environment, and that's all you're changing. You've got, that code will have its own identity. It will likely be in 1, 2, 3, maybe different languages. And your ask isn't to improve it. Your ask is, right, we need to get this from here. It's working in this environment, and then we're going to move it into this environment. Asking everybody to then, every person maybe in a like 50+ team, to think about how they would do that individually. It's a huge amount of think time, whilst actually all you're asking for is the same thing. And I think that frustrates individuals as well, because you're kind of selling them something that isn't what you want. You want the move, and then it'll maybe improve. Don't know if that answers your question.
Sort of.
Sort
Sort
happening.
So the drivers for these things. So we talked about kind of moves to the cloud and things like that. But I think is there a case that those drivers should never come from the technology team? We talked about value modes. Should the drivers for digital transformation always come from the business, or is there a case within inside the technology team?
Technology teams, I think, what you want to do if you want to be successful, if anything, that I personally learned, again, going through a number of these, is that you want to get your workforce across, including your technology people, to think like that. Think about what are the needs, what are the outcomes, and what are the best way of addressing that. So it could come from a technology part of the business, because again, they would have a particular set of tools that they can offer to deliver those kind of outcomes for the business. But it could be initiated somewhere else. And the key there is, again, making sure there is a good level of collaboration going on for everybody to understand we are all aligned. This is what we understand. These are the reasoning. And sometimes also, again, taking into account that, again, these things should be sometimes treated as an experiment, because we say that based on these assumptions, we think that this is what we want to do, and these are the set of outcomes that we are aiming for. Mm-hmm. And then the trick becomes, what's the fastest way of getting there in a safe, controlled fashion that we can just kind of like prove that this experiment actually is working and paying off for us. And if you can get that kind of embedded in your organization, I think you really got something really good going. So it can come from technology or that stuff.
But it needs to align with like the strategy of the overall business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, so I'm again coming from the opposite side. So when I first came into this industry, I actually trained as a business analyst. So that's kind of where my trajectory went. And I have always seen tech as an enabler, never as driving the transformation. So for me, and this is where I show my age now, if there's probably people in the room that won't know this, but when we're at school, you used to have the overhead projectors where you'd have the acetate sheets on that you used to project onto the wall. If you don't know, Google it, kids. And that's kind of what it reminds me of. So you should have your overarching strategy, so your business strategy. You should have your product and your technical strategy that then kind of overlay onto the top of that. So for me, tech driving that is a little bit dangerous. So no, it's okay. And just ensuring again that everything that we do from a tech enablement perspective should map back to that strategy, that outcome, that delivery, that value, not just doing it for doing its sake. So sorry.
No, because this is exactly what I would say. Like, back to the agile transformation, it's very simple. I think that technology can drive or co-drive.
Co-drive, I'll let you have that.
It's difficult for you to drive the entire business, right? But you can certainly give far options that the business alone would not know that it's viable, right? So if you have some direction, and so like this is where we'd like to go, we can provide all the different ways to get there, and even possible other solutions. But we fail, and I say we because we are a technical company. I'm a technical person, so I've seen we failing multiple times, and I'll tell you why it does. It most of the time didn't work, and I'm guilty of that myself, because we were selling the practices. Mm-hmm. For example, when we transitioned from, like, for example, when I came to agile and extreme programming, very big into test-driven development and the whole extreme programming practices, we would go to the business and say we all need to do test-driven development. We all need to do pair programming. And the business was like, yeah, but why would we do that? Because and then I realized we were selling the practice and not the value that it brings. So we were not talking. And it's exactly what happened with Scrum. It's like we need to adopt Scrum. No, we need to work better together. Yeah. We need to synchronize. We need to work in an iterative way. We need to figure out where we are going. We need to identify problems faster, right? We need to be able to stop the production line quicker. So then, like, I remember that after the whole agile thing, we could not even mention the word agile because people would shut us down straight away. But then if we said, look, okay, no, forget about it, don't mention the A word. And then we would say, look, the way that we work, like we like to sync up every day in the morning, just to figure out what everyone is doing. So, that sounds a great idea. Maybe we should I don't know, we agree, let's try to agree what we're gonna be doing the next week or two and stuff. And then, oh yeah, good. Oh, what if we had a sync up point where you can show where we are after 2 weeks? Oh yeah, I think that's a great idea for us to keep. Great, so let's do that then, right? And no one had an issue with that. And test-driven development was exactly the same thing. So what if we imagine if all the tests could be automated, right? So we always knew there is a bug. So, that would get great ideas, right? Okay, so yeah, but also we need to figure out a way to disseminate knowledge across the developer, so we don't rely on a single person. So yeah, that's a great idea. We didn't need to talk about test-driven developer programming. So what if as we are working and we are working on something new, and we are touching that area, at that point we make that area better. With that. Can we factor that work into the thing, then we gradually improve the system? Yeah. We didn't need to talk about refactoring. See what I'm saying? So, and then, going back to the point, we are doing the same thing with migrating to the cloud. We're doing the same thing to, we need to move this thing to another technology. We are showing solutions without addressing the problem. So we are pitching at the wrong level. Instead of saying, look, we have loads of problems in our operations department. We never know when our system goes down. Or it's very difficult to figure out what's going in production. Or it takes a long time. Our lead time from someone finishing the development until the software is in production is too long. What if we could minimize that? What if we could find better ways to understand what's going on in the system and have a dashboard where you can see data? Now you're talking. Because now you're talking about business process, and then we can say we can automate pipelines, we can use AWS, and we can use dashboards in whatever, in Tableau or whatever. So, and I think this is why technology can help the business, but we need to talk about at the right level. No, we cannot just say let's adopt.
Yeah, and I think of the lady in the audience, we were having a chat at the beginning. So we both worked for the same local government establishment, and one of our biggest bugbears, and I think you're still going through the same pain so many years later, is that, well, I've come from this place and I've used this tool, therefore I'm going to buy that without having that assessment of whether that's the right thing to do. And you end up with this solution soup where you're trying to get so many things integrating and talking to one another that are not compatible. So you end up with this huge monolithic estate that then you're trying to pick apart and pull apart. And I don't know if it's still the same, but uncovering things that you didn't even know existed at one point. So there's that side of things as well, where some people can get so obsessed with the technology that they're kind of blinded by their own experience and their own positive experience, and not realise that positive experience was in a totally different context. So it's like if I took an orchid into the desert, it's not really going to survive, but a cactus is fine. So it's the same principle. What's the environment? What's the organisation? What's the structure? What does it need to do in that context?
That's where the trick is, essentially, again, treat all of these things as tools and pick the right tools for the right problem. It just doesn't mean that just because I'm really good at using this particular tool in a particular context, it's just going to work everywhere. We're going to apply it. But unfortunately, as I said, currently quite a lot of it gets packaged up as the end game. Let's just learn this tool, how to just kind of use a hammer, and that's what companies and organizations end up doing, but they forget what the problem was that they were trying to solve. So there's validity to all of that. It's, again, just learning. I think I like how you describe it, Sandro, in terms of saying that, well, actually, let's talk about the problem, and this is what we're doing, and then get them to see the value of that, and then get them to just use that within that context. And that's not the end game. It's not that, okay, you're going to need to do this, but you're actually helping them to learn how to solve the problem better.
Yeah. So, despite how it may appear, I did do a bit of prep before this thing today. And I went through it and looked at, okay, well, do digital transformations actually fail? And you can go from anything. I think there's a very famous Gartner report, McKinsey report, which was at about 70%. You can find others at more like 20%. You can find others in the high 80s, low 90s as well. So if they were in the high 80s, high 90s, would we if that was actually the case, would we even be sat here talking about, would another one ever start? Because no business would take that risk, right? So, and these are often very expensive things. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by failure, and then perhaps move on to how we spot it early.
So, yeah.
No.
So the what I mean by failure when speaking to, again, we are a consultancy company, so we work with other companies, right? So of course that our work is also under a lot of scrutiny as well. So because people are paying for, but it's not only from an external company. So there is a group of people that is sponsoring those digital transformations. So when I come to what I define by failure is the people sponsoring those transformations that tend to go for a few years. The reports are about like asking those people, are you happy with the return on your investment? So after a few years of investment, of all these changes across all the organization, from process, from people, from culture, from technology, are you happy after 3 years? And the vast majority said, didn't get the full return on my investment. And that's where I was coming from. The problem that, going back to some of the things you discussed, was also that they had a goal in mind, they had a direction in mind. For example, want to bring a new product or increase our efficiency or whatever else. But then, along the line, the metrics used were not great. So similar to like, oh, we are going to measure how many teams now are adopting Scrum. It's exactly the same we're doing now. It's like, how many teams migrated to the cloud? How many teams are now, I don't know, doing something else? They are using a different technology, or they... So it's the wrong metric. Because then we force all those people to change how they work and push them to adopt completely new technologies. And we measure that adoption. And then the guys are like, look, I just wanted a better product. See what I'm saying? I just wanted like to spend less in our operation. I just want to have a different market share. And now we are, but all your teams now, exactly, they're on the cloud now.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's for me, the failure happens is we are in the detail, we start focusing on things that don't match the actual goal. We measure, we manage that, and we lose track of what we were trying to do. And then there is that frustration of, yeah, we didn't get there.
Yeah, and I guess you mentioned that all your teams are in the cloud now. Well, if the sponsor didn't even notice, right, that they're in the cloud now because there's been no.
No worries. Like, sorry, I'm taking too much time now, but I promise that I will be quick enough. But for example, some companies were worse after the cloud migration because they had an operations team that was very. I'm not saying that cloud's not a good idea. Please don't. It's not what I'm saying. But there is a journey to go through. That's what I'm trying to say. So you go from a place where you have a lot of people that maintain an on-prem system. And they've been doing that for a decade or longer. And now you take the same people, it's like you're going to move your entire state into the cloud that you know nothing about. And now you need to work with security and scalability and all of that. And your cost, a lot of companies, when they go, because they do lift and shift, their cost was way higher now in the cloud than they were before. So that initial migration is worse than worse. And now they did this big jump, this massive investment, and now they cannot get out of it because now they don't even have the expertise to get out of that place. But they migrated, but they are worse. They need to continue the journey and means far more investment to actually benefit from the cloud. But they don't plan that part. So that's one of the failures that I was trying to explain.
I think for me as well, one of the biggest failures I've seen is forgetting that people are a part of that journey. So we've all got this great strategy, this great idea, we've pulled our funding together, and the first the team know about it is probably at a meeting. There's been no groundwork that's done to that. There's no thinking about the psychological safety that people have, that they need to feel. I was reading something around, I'm going to get really boring now, sorry, but prefrontal cortex and limbic system, and the fact that, you know, we've not really evolved that much, and we can't, you know, a social threat and a threat to life we perceive as the same thing. And again, we've got to be really mindful of people in that journey, and like you said, teams that have been used to maintaining systems are one way, probably will think, well, hang on, does that mean there's no need for me anymore? So you can have an exodus of really good talent as well, because it's a misconception of what this transformation actually means.
Yeah, you read the stuff around change and like fear. Then there's that fear of losing my job. Am I going to be needed after this, or I moved to this new technology, and now I'm extremely senior in the thing that I do right now. But we're going to move, and you know, we've been doing Java here for the last 10 years. I'm extremely senior in this, and now we've decided we're going to move to TypeScript. As like all of a sudden now I'm back on. You know, it's a very difficult thing, and that fear is that can. I know I'm not supposed to be on the panel, but but that fear, I think, can really build up some resistance to change. And all of a sudden, because you haven't done that groundwork at the start, you're swimming against the current for the rest of the way.
I don't think just doing it at the start cuts it. I think you have to do it throughout the whole life cycle in the program. And when you do get to the stage where you might be slightly off track, or there might be issues, I think the way that you communicate with the people that you're working with, and the different people that are working on slightly different elements of the thing that you're trying to achieve, is so important. Because actually, in the busyness of trying to get something done, sometimes that communication gets lost, and then you're not taking people on that journey with you. You might have told them about chapter 1, but you haven't told them about chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we land at 7, and they're like, oh wow, what is this? So, you know. But just going back to the idea of failure, I think for me, anything that doesn't achieve the why that you set out to achieve with the change that you instigated is a fail. So if you're not realizing the benefits that you intentionally, well, you said, I want to achieve this benefit, and that is probably quite the extreme view, and that probably means we have more failures. But I think because transformation can be so hard, and it is so hard, but actually I've just gotten quite a lot from you guys, so I wouldn't put that in the same bracket anymore, can be very, very hard. And with nostalgia, we like to look back and go, actually, it wasn't so much of a failure, but actually, in brass tacks and from a business perspective, if you haven't achieved the benefits that you set out to, I would argue that is a failure. But you might not badge it in the same way with the team that have just invested their last 3 years of their professional career on this thing, that you then come out and say, yay, great, we finished, thank you so much, but by the way, that was a failure. Because you have made it. Just
at that part, usually also it gets brushed under the carpet. So everybody recognizes it, nobody wants to talk about it, so they move on. They usually sort of like, there's the next thing that comes along. So I think, but that is absolutely crucial, because again, what you want to do in terms of understanding where you're going, if you're on track or you're going wrong, is again, have a good feedback loop end to end, right? And you are doing that conversation and communication throughout with everyone on the ground, all the way up to your leadership and back, right? So you're doing it as a team, as a whole team. It's not sort of like, here's a mandate for you to just go out and implement whatever that might be, or let's just get to the cloud. You're actually talking about the thing that matters. And you're talking about it, again, transparently and honestly, because that's where you want to fail fast, and you want to say that actually, no, that thing doesn't seem to be giving us the value now. You could maybe make other technical choices, or you could decide that actually it was even the wrong decision. We should revert back. I think sometimes it takes courage to just say that this is not a good idea, and it becomes this idea of everybody kind of like knows it and sense it, but nobody wants to talk about it. So this is again going back about psychological safety. If you've got a good culture, somebody or multiple people will put their hands up and say, actually, we've got a problem here, or is this thing actually going the way that we anticipated it?
I think that's the hardest thing to do, and I would say I've only ever suggested that we stop 2 programs of work ever in my whole entire career. And it was quite scary doing that, because I was essentially saying, please fire me. I'm here, but you don't actually need me. You need to stop this. The benefits are not being realised. There's no consistent view across this. You need to stop, take stock, rethink, revisit what you're doing. And we were having the conversation before the panel, actually, she was saying, don't go too soon. But I joined a program for a big insurer a few years ago, And we were, I think, about £8 million in at this point, attempt number 5 at getting this re-platforming program actually anywhere. And I was brought in, I was like, oh great, is this an absolute hospital pass, career ending, cheers. But then sat down with the teams and thought, we'd had, I'm not going to mention the names in here, but we'd had quite a lot of the big consultancies, the big digital firms in. And I sat in a room with my main sponsors and went, we're all kind of missing the point here. There's only one common denominator in all of that, and that's us. That's not who we've brought in. Have we had that introspection to look at what we're doing? How it's coming into, how the commands are coming into the team? Are we giving that team psychological safety in order for them to make a mistake? Are we asking them to do proof of concepts, or do we actually berate them? You know, do we just live off a rag status? Is that what we're kind of, you know, going towards here? And it was a bit of, like, we've done any lessons learned. Have we spoken to people that have been in this 5-year journey? Oh, well, no, not really. So, and then I provided a very anonymised forum because there was a real fear culture within this particular organisation, and it spread across the globe, and you've got to account for kind of different cultures and ways of working. And it came back time and time again to, we've no clear direction. We get multiple competing priorities from multiple senior stakeholders, and that was the common theme throughout it all. And so I had to make the popular decision to say, right, I want this and this person off the steering group. I don't want men. I want one person that's empowered to make those decisions, that has the full autonomy, that understands the business, understands the value, has got that view right from strategy view through to the end customer, and I want that person. It wasn't popular, but I did bump into somebody at a funeral this last week who said it was a successful program. But they've managed to get there in the end. But we didn't go, is it us?
Mm-hmm. There is a lot of things to unpack in that. I see if I can remember a lot, because you made a lot of very good points. No, it's great actually. Like I will try to remember all the good points you made, so if I can unpack. Because like one was, there is one that is a bit wider, that is about the fear of failure, and there are ways of working, you know, quite a few scenarios that you can eliminate the whole notion of failure completely, right? So one is an iterative approach, and that works well for things that are more common. For example, we know that throughout our life as a technology company, we will need to be evolving our technology. That is a constant, right? That continuous evolution is a constant. So that kind of scenario, you can do in a continuous way, and you can do that if you do incrementally. You remove failure completely, because it's a continuous thing forever. You can do some experiments, you work in small increments. So let's try to do that. If we do that, let's see, can we optimize a little bit more our operational efficiency? If we do that, can we reduce cost in that area? Can we respond to our clients a bit faster? So those are things that will always be small changes, small improvements to the business, and they are continuous. In cases like that, an agile process, iterative, remove failures from the equation. It's easy to experiment, because that's the other point you made, is creating a safe space for people to fail. But there is a context to this, because like, it's fine to create a safe space to fail if the cost of failure is low, right? But if the cost of failure is high, you cannot just say, look, we have just this amount of money from investors and stuff, is either in make or break. You cannot, then you bring good people, make sure that you have success, but you cannot say, oh, play with the stuff, and if you fail, it's okay, we learn. No, it's gone. That business is gone. So you cannot fail there. So you need also to understand, when you create a space for people to fail, the cost of failure needs to be low. Right, so if you are trying to bring a new product to market with investors and stuff, that you have a much more clear view of is a failure or not, but a continuous evolution of your process, those are much easier to do. Or you have is that also, and then there is another aspect, is also how you manage that. You mentioned stakeholders and stuff. That is probably, I'm sure that most of you are familiar, but the different mindset when you have a product mindset and a project mindset, right? So that's also a problem, because for product companies, technology companies, that they will keep evolving over time, a product mindset is more suitable, because then they're always think about the strategic side of the product, keep evolving in a strategic way, do small changes and try and stuff. If you have a project, then you have a goal. I want to start doing this now. It's going to take 10 months. That's the amount of money that I'm going to allocate, and I want this done. And then because you have that, then the means justify the ends. And then you start cutting corners, you start doing all that kind of stuff because you want the end result no matter what. Otherwise, it's a failure. And so that I would remove as well for things that are the cost of failure is low. But if they are big, I would certainly manage that, and I would make sure that I would bring the right people to do that, and not say, oh, let's give a chance to John and Mary and for them to experiment. No, it don't have to be like that.
I think the cost of failure thing is quite interesting. So one of the things from my perspective is how do you differentiate between kind of this continuum of going from early innovation idea into getting actually a product and you've got confidence. So the earlier you are in that innovation phase, you want to make sure, again, you reduce the cost by doing fast experimentation to see if you're on track. Basically, is this thing actually, are we going to be able to innovate in this area? So you don't want to take long. It has to be thin, it has to be kind of controlled, and you have to have the right people, again, just working on that, focusing on it. And defining that in terms of failure, it means that we are failing, but we are making progress, right? So because when you're innovating, you're not going to get the answer the first time around. If it was that easy, like somebody else already answered it before you. So what you want to do is reduce the cost, fail fast, but make sure you're on track to demonstrate that you're able to innovate. And then what I describe is that you at certain point you get to this raising level of confidence that we can actually introduce a product into the market based on this new innovation. And that's where you've got more flexibility, and then we can just get add more features and things like that. But sometimes we'll end up, again, picking the wrong thing for the wrong type of thing you're trying to do. So you do quite a lot of features before you even answer the question around whether the innovation thing is going to take off or not. And we've added quite a lot of waste into your process with a lot of costs.
And then again, because we tend to think about sometimes like some e-commerce here and there, but there are systems that we work with a lot of heavily regulated industries. Well, you work in one as well. So the cost of failure in a trading platform or in a healthcare system is massive. Mm-hmm. We had a large healthcare company in US, like they were processing like millions of transactions every month, and that was people doing exams, going to labs, getting test results back, and allergies and all this kind of stuff. A bug in there, a system that doesn't process one of those things, can literally kill a person. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely regulated. Everything you do there, you follow procedures and stuff like that. So this is not an area that you bring inexperienced people to try out and fail and learn from failures.
I think one interesting thing now, I'm aware of that project, and I know the team members that were on it. And one other thing is, because they were so experienced and they knew they could see the problems with this thing, is they had a fear then working on that things like now I can see how this thing. I don't want to touch this, right? Because this is that I'm worried now that I'm going to mess up and kill someone with this piece of software. But
but then there are other systems other areas of the system that is a user management, that is like the billing side and stuff that is also part of the system. There are many other, not every other area of the same system are so critical.
And it's risk based. This is where you put that extra effort into testing, extra effort.
Exactly, that's where your effective engineering practices comes into place, because you create that safety net for your team to say that actually, yes, this is a critical system, but we've well designed it and the engineering practices are good. And that means that the barrier is kind of like is lower in terms of being able to onboard people into that.
And I would say good engineering practices do allow you to go into proof of concept though. Again, sorry, central government and their bashing. But working on a client account where it was in the healthcare. And so we went from somebody using their own mobile phone, a spreadsheet, texting individuals, to we have to do something within 7 days. We've got an incoming health threat that's just emerged from nowhere. And I think I'm allowed to say, maybe not. So we've got an emerging health threat that we had to respond to quickly, but we had 7 days, so we didn't have time to get it absolutely perfect. So we had to go with proof of concept. But what the success for that was getting the message to the individual that didn't require somebody to be sat on the phone typing a message in. So that was successful for us. It went through robust engineering processes and obviously all the data governance and everything else. So those structures were in place. But I think we were commended at a health conference for the UK's response to that. We'd had the fastest response out of the whole of the globe. And that was off the back of a proof of concept. That then did obviously evolve into being something a little bit more robust in a public beta, but at that time it was better than what we had. And I think that happens a lot during COVID as well, actually. I think governments particularly started to embrace the innovation space because they had to. They didn't have very many options.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole world moved online, and all of a sudden you couldn't go down to your local tax office or the post office and do things, right? So things moved a lot.
But the benefit of getting it right when it works like that, especially if you've got a good purpose, you're working on something that genuinely has got a positive impact. And I've kind of been privileged to work in some teams that they operate like this. It really is so motivating for everyone, and everybody just puts their mind and heart into it. So it's not, I don't want this to become kind of like all doom and gloom that should we even kind of like attend this kind of thing. I think there are ways of getting it right, and when you do, it pays off, and people do genuinely enjoy it, and it's quite motivating for the workforce.
But I think that's a really interesting point, like doom and gloom. So when I first started the transformation, that we were a whisker away from finishing. It was so close. It was very, very, very lonely as a leader, and actually just kind of putting your hand up and going, I don't know what I'm doing. Not necessarily actually, to be fair, I was pretty honest with my team at the time and said we really need to work together, but just being open and honest and reaching into your network and asking, what have other people experienced and how have you managed the situation? I actually have found LinkedIn to be amazing for that kind of thing, and then it's like this one, but yeah, that's really important and helpful not to feel alone and to learn from others, because if there are huge amounts of digital transformations happening, most people will have worked, if you work in digital, you are a human being who's experienced change, you will have experience that you can share in those ones.
Like a small tangent, but I think that because we were discussing about this earlier as well, it's about leadership.
Yeah.
Because in all those digital transformations, one of the key thing that we see people complain about is lack of good leadership, and the leadership doesn't have a strategy, and the leadership is this and that, or so on. And now you are showing, for example, you are leading a transformation, leading teams and stuff, and you said it can be very lonely, and I certainly can relate to that myself. The funny thing about is the different team standards that people judge us. For example, if they when they're looking at their colleagues, they are all, oh yeah, we need to help Susan, and we need to support Paul, and let's create a safe environment. But if it's the leader doesn't have a plan. He doesn't know what he's doing. And all of a sudden they expect the leader to come up with this miraculous plan. The leader wants to have a 5-year detailed plan, know clearly where they're going, need to lay out all the strategy and stuff. And then the same leader goes to the team that is complaining that they don't have, and the leader goes there, it's like, look, can you do an estimate of these tasks? Oh, we don't do estimates. There is too much variety here. No, we cannot. The team, estimation, create a plan for 2 months worth of work. No, we cannot do that. But the leader needs to have a 5-year plan. So, see what I'm saying? But I like, for example, what you said, because that person that is in a leadership position, that person was not born there, right? So he was growing, and so this person is probably doing the first time that they're doing those things, and I think that there needs this tolerance, and also is important for the leaders to show their vulnerability as well and say, look, I'm trying to lead this, but I've never done this before. And we had this conversation a lot, like for example, growing a company. We've never done this before. I never grew a company. So, and in many projects that we're doing, it's the first time that we're doing that themselves. So it's also being vulnerable, but everyone also needs to understand that we are together. But don't come in and use like, I want a 5-year detailed plan from the leader, where I cannot even provide estimates for a bloody sprint.
That's authentic leadership, you see, what Bobby is saying here. So you're not always looking to your leaders to just give you the detailed answer, but you're looking at them to give you kind of like direction where we are heading and why. So you want to be clear about why we are trying to do something. And then a good sign of a leader, again, is that they would find the right people with the right attitude, the right skill, and they've got that transparency and people can openly communicate with them. And when there is, I don't know, there's a gap in skills or there's a problem, they see the leaders as a part of the team, not this separation that, it's us against them or vice versa. Also, they can go the other way around as well. And I don't know, this team is just like, why is it that they're not delivering, man? You need to have both sides of it. And then once you've got that, it's actually quite amazing because, again, it allows people to understand that, it's just not everybody knows everything. And that's, and also things change. It's just like, okay, I've learned something now, but this is only, again, applicable in this particular context. So I'm not able to just answer the same question again 3 times, solve 3 different problems. It will be like, well, we're going to need to take a look at it again, see what the problem is.
There was, I can't remember the naming around it, apologies, but there's that great case study of the naval commander on the submarine where if anybody watches that is absolutely amazing, and that for me is what leadership's about, because actually the people that work for you 9 times out of 10 have got the answers. But coming back to it, I keep banging on about this psychological safety. I'm sorry, but you can probably tell I'm quite wedded to it. The fact that the people within your organisation live and breathe it, they will have the answers, but they need to be empowered to collaborate and help you. Again, you put your hand up and said, I'm struggling with this.
I think they also need to know that when they speak to you, and if you make a decision, if you're making a decision and actually something happens. So making a decision is one part of it, but if people have talked to you and they've come forward with ideas and you've got to the point where you've got a solution, then who is going to action that to fix the problem? And then just kind of leaving it in this ether of nobody's really done anything just compounds that. But I don't think that has to be the leader in that scenario, but I do think that then it's about working with the group to agree who that is.
There is
ownership.
Because there are 2 extremes, right? So one is a dictator, command and control, trying to decide everything. But the other extreme is almost like anarchy, right? So it's, everyone has an opinion now. And the truth is, there is a difference of consulting people and informing them what they're trying to do, and then them having equal saying or equal voting on the decision. There's a very big difference in there. And companies that went too far on the other side, they also have analysis paralysis. They don't move because, imagine trying, we are 4 people and we have slightly different opinions on things. Imagine trying to do that across a massive organization. So then we call it, I call it spheres of influence, right? So there are multiple spheres of influence, and those spheres of influence need to be clear, right? So, and or autonomy boundaries is another term that I also use, the kind of where I'm coming from. So let's use autonomy boundaries for this scenario. So there are boundaries in there that the team should have the autonomy to decide what they need to do. But they cannot do, let's say if they are a development team, they cannot dictate the architecture used across all the other teams. They have autonomy within the work that they do, but they cannot dictate across. So then there is a new autonomy boundary that a few people can consult, can be informed. It's a whole racy metric kind of stuff. But there are just very few people that can make decisions at that boundary, and then so on and so forth. So this needs to be clear, because then you have a healthy debate. You are informing people, you are giving them autonomy, but it's constrained, is within a boundary. Otherwise, it just becomes anarchy.
And that's actually where your expert can help you. So with that, what you're trying to do is essentially say that who knows about this and what kind of skills do we need to solve this particular problem. And you want to consult those people, and their say obviously has to be taken into account. Now, somebody can actually challenge it. That's I think a healthy thing to do. But again, yeah, I don't know if you're doing cloud migration, how much I know about cloud, right? What qualifies me to say something about it? Now, I might spot something or ask, be able to ask an informed question. That's helpful for the expert, again, just to make sure they don't have a blind spot. But again, they encourage kind of like diversity of thinkings in the team and allows the right people to just focus on the right problem domain to help to, again, just achieve the outcomes that you're trying to achieve.
I think we've got a few questions on the app. Please feel free to add any more that you've got. I just thought, before we just go to those, just is there anything that you came here that you really wanted to get off your chest? Any key takeaway from today that, like, if you just learned something from this discussion today, what would that be?
Think slow, act fast.
There is one topic that we didn't touch upon. We can do that outside or through questions. That is one key thing on. I don't like even the word failure in digital transformation, although that's the topic. But
You don't like any of that.
no, so I didn't but no, it is like a lot of people say like there is resistance to change. Like people sometimes are very resistant when they're trying to drive change. Not everyone is on board, and because like you said something that I remember a conversation we were thinking that it was what's what hire slowly and fire fast.
Yeah.
That was also something along those lines, because when you are changing your organization, you need to bring people along. But there is a limit to how much you try. So there is an element as well, because if you are transforming your organization, and that transformation is not only technology, as normally digital transformation is tend to be quite broad in processes, people, and so on and so forth. Some people we need to nurture them and grow. Others will be very excited about it, but others will be a big block. And after trying a bit, you need to remove those blocks.
I think for me, what is really underestimated is the culture of the organisation. So there's a framework called Competing Values Framework. And again, have a look at it online in your own leisure. So you've got control, compete, collaborate, create. Now, depending on where your organisation sits within that quadrant, kind of mandates your attitude to change as well. So control, which tends to be government, let's face it, very heavily regulated. It's a small incremental change that's so in terms of your digital transformation, you definitely can't go big bang. But when you're looking at a creative organisation, then big bang, let's throw everything out and start again. But and again, it's not you sit in one of those quadrants. You could actually sit across a couple of those, and there's no one type of organisation in terms of culture that's better than the other. But what I would say is recognise where you're at now in terms of your culture and where you want to be and what the delta is to get there before you even think about a digital transformation. Understand who you are, where you need to be as an organisation before you get to even starting to think about that question, for me, would be the key takeaway.
For me, is again, so I keep repeating it, but pay attention to the value you're trying to deliver and carry your people with you. So you're doing this with your people, you're not doing it to your people, if that makes sense. So then that can work. Yes.
Thank you. You have some questions?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so we've got a few questions. So keep them coming in. I'll keep an eye on them. So appreciate this is quite a big topic, but it's one that's been got the most votes. So it's a question around how's culture applicable to digital transformation. So mindful big topic, but thoughts on that?
I think it's really strange because I did a culture. We were talking yesterday about. I had a presentation just around culture, because it's quite a nebulous concept as well. So what do we mean by culture? And I think one of the definitions that we talked about yesterday was the fact it's the rules that govern us when rules don't exist. So it's the behaviours that we demonstrate when there's no policy to say how we should behave.
Good.
And there are assessments that you can do online to assess what your culture is. And there's a feeling around, well, if I change people's thinking, therefore it will change the culture. Where actually there was coming back, there was a collaboration between Toyota and GM Motors going back into the early 90s, I think it was, or late 80s, and GM Motors had the worst performing plant ever, which is the Fremont plant, which was closed in 1982. There was open sabotage by employees on the production line. There was open use of drugs and alcohol, but they had the fiercest union, so you couldn't get rid of them. They were rewarded for the number of cars that they put through, so 9 times out of 10 they fell apart. Anyway, the plant closed down. But GM Motors at this time had, going back even then, had a quota of the creation of economical vehicles, and their quality was pants. Like, there was no chance they were going to do it. Toyota wanted to enter the US market, were struggling. They made fantastic quality economical cars, and so this amalgamation came between GM Motors and Toyota, and NUMMI was what was born out of that. Now, the only stipulation that GM had was to use the Fremont plant that had closed in 1982 as their worst performing plant, and they to take the first 100 militant employees that were part of that demise, which Toyota said, yeah, fine, no problem, but we bring our managers in. And what the Toyota worked on the principle is, if you change the behaviour, you then change the culture. You can't change the thinking to change the behaviour. You change the behaviours first. And that went from the worst performing plant in the group to best performing, the highest productivity, the lowest turnover. And it was simple things such as somebody said, I'm really struggling putting these wheel bearings on, or whatever it may be. Well, what's the problem? Not just get on with it, that's your job, do it. Well, actually, my knees are really hurting. So they rolled out these cushions for the production line. So it was just that behaviour, and they could say, well, actually, I'm being listened to, and now I'm being rewarded for that behaviour. So then that behaviour became kind of being incorporated into the culture, to the point where people were, on the production line, they would put their personal mobile phones on business cards inside the cars because they were so proud of their quality. So you go from these 100 militant employees that used to put tuna sandwiches down the back of cars before they rolled off, that, loosen wheel nuts on purpose, and they used to have a bit of a, joke about it, to having this real, that for me was the biggest culture change ever. And it was little things. There's a pride in what you're doing, but it was the behaviour. So I think there's a huge thing around culture there. And again, coming back to a point that I made earlier around the fact that, all of our processes and our managerial styles haven't evolved since 1911. So Frederick Wilmslow Taylor was the first to, look at processes and thinking about sequential steps of things. We're still trying to operate in that context, but we're in a digital age. So we're trying to use management structures that are a good 100 a year so out of date now. So in terms of the culture, that's really what we need to do in terms of that psychological safety, show that the world has moved on. And actually what was fit for purpose then is not fit for purpose now. And not to say that was wrong, but it's got a point in time. So there's that change, that fear of just starting and trying something new again. Sorry, I went off there. I'm quite passionate about that.
Good. Okay, thank you. So, interesting one here around a different subject really. So what are the panel's thoughts on whether technical debt is a real or perceived barrier to progress?
I think it depends on the context again. So you see, the technical debt, what you want to take a look at it is, sometimes I think this is again where we can create misalignment. So the engineering team can be too focused around, well, actually what I want to do is have the perfect code base, right? And that can be misaligned with what you're trying to do with the business outcome you're trying to achieve. So in my experience, what we try to do is to, again, just saying that, explaining that as an engineering team, to literally we have to kind of like be able to have that conversation, for example, with the product owner, to say that this particular thing that we are trying to create, if we have time to focus on this area of the code to pay off the technical debt, clean it up, we are able to get that outcome faster, and you're focusing on the same thing again. So it's not detached from kind of like we're just concerned with the engineering practices, and the product owner is obviously just, well, I'm responsible to make sure that the features gets produced. So it's a collaboration of finding out how much you need to do when you do that, and what's the value you will get from it. But definitely it's a good metrics to pay attention to if it's building up, because you can get into trouble.
Yeah, one of our key service lines is software modernization. So, and modernizing system is all about looking at technical debt. So one aspect is what do we qualify as technical debt? Because like a debt implies that you might need to pay it back, but you should only pay that back if it's in a critical path. Because like the thing is, like, it's very easy to go to a set of code base and you start pointing the finger, so like, this is not well done according to our criteria, this is bad or this is good, and so on and so forth. But if that area of the code base is not in a critical path for everything you're going to do in the future, there's absolutely no reason to pay that debt, because you don't need to, because it's not a proper debt, right? It's more like an obstacle if you are going a certain direction, and that area is really complicated because there's no automation, there's not whatever, there's lack of knowledge or old technology and so on. It will be difficult to evolve and rely on that area, so it will be extra effort to do that. So then, for example, what we normally do is we do an assessment, but then we say like, look, let's look forward. So where are we going? And then we understand what is in that critical path, and then we will factor in the evolution of that area so that you can build the next thing in a solid foundation. That is one aspect. The other aspect is to stop generating that, because like you cannot start building it. This is a problem that you have with paying off technical debt, because you need to be careful not to use the people that actually create the technical debt in the first place, and that's not their fault entirely, because they might not know better, right? So, but you cannot just say, oh, we're going to take the same people and build all those systems, and now we're going to try to pay off this debt. And what do you expect them to do? To overnight learn new practices and technologies and ways of working? That will make them far slower. So go to a team today and say, look, we need to stop using this technology, and now we need to start everything we do need to test drive. They come to a halt. They come to absolutely halt. Or no, now we cannot use this technology anymore. Now we need to do everything that you do is on the cloud, using AWS Lambda and TypeScript. Mm-hmm. What do you expect these people to do? See what I'm saying? So paying technical, that is not that simple. So when modernizing system, you need to first of all, is there value? There is a plan of upskilling some of those people, not all, because you also don't want to upskill the entire organization, because there's no point in doing that. And then make sure that there are some expertise, either bring from external or you hire, to do that properly, and then set the standards. And then you have, like, for example, programs where you can start gradually disseminating that knowledge, because this is another thing about, sorry, I'm taking too long now, but there's another point that's important. Some companies try to tackle technical debt in a very tactical way. For example, oh, let's give training. So then we hire someone to give the TDD training or clean code or domain-driven design training, and we ourselves give those trainings. But I always say to them, like, maximum that you can do. Because I'm not a magician, like I can give a 2-day training course, but that doesn't mean that those people after 2 days, they're going to be mastering test-driven development or domain-driven design or whatever else. What the maximum that they're going to get is like they have a foundation, they have a vocabulary, and they know what's possible to do. But that's the very beginning of their journey. So then you need to have, like, I call the distinction of individual knowledge and systemic knowledge. Individual knowledge is what you give to people. I'm going to give training to people or coaching a team, you're going to give them individual knowledge. If they leave the company, you lost that knowledge. And then people that came in, make sure that when you hire them, you hire with the knowledge that you already need. Otherwise, you need to train the new people as well, right? But then, so a lot of people just invest, let's do training. Most people will do their training and they will not be able to apply. And that is a complete waste of money, and they leave the company. Systemic knowledge is how you work. For example, if I join Flutter today, or your organization and stuff, you work already in a certain way. So if I join today, you say, look, Sandro, this is our repositories, this is technology, this is how we do our processes, this is how we do our planning, and so this is systemic knowledge. So when you are evolving technical, that is not only changing the code and doing some refactoring and stuff, it's like, can we start adding processes and now start disseminating across the organization? There are many processes. I can talk to you outside if you want more depth into this, but elevating the ways of working. And I think that you were going through some of it in your organization as well, is adopting new practices, new standards and stuff. But what you're doing, you are creating systemic knowledge. So the new people joining today, they will have different ways of working that they had when you started your training. Sorry, it's a very moment.
I would also, the only thing I would add to that as well is that everybody wants to see the nice new shiny thing. So I think setting your stall out early, especially when you're doing new product development, to say, we are not going to show you something every 2 weeks. There will be times when the team need to work on the foundations. They need to work on the code. So there will be at points where I don't have anything nice and bright and shiny to show you, because that is the expectation for the customer. We will always see something new.
Well, you will always see progress, right? So there are still metrics you can gather, right? So it's prove to show that the code is being improved, the technical debt is being remade.
This is a very slippery slope, because we learned that, the software modernization service fine, because we had to learn ourselves, because like we are fiddling with technology, but very rarely we are modernizing, we are stabilizing and things like that, creating new foundations and so on. But very rarely you have a screen. So doing demo in software modernization process is very complicated. Yep. But we had to learn, because otherwise you go into those black hole initiatives that I was talking about. They create API gateways for everything, data lakes and stuff. And then people pay, so like, okay, it's been a year and a half. How are you getting on? Oh yeah, we're still working on it. We'll tell you when we are done. And that cannot happen. So even in a modernization, even if you're doing it like evolving the system, you need to find a way to map that to, we are improving the efficiency here. So at least this area of the system, hey, can you see this? I can click a button now. This whole area is just a small area, it's a small percent. It's 2% of the whole code base, but that area here, you don't need manual testing anymore. So sometimes it's that kind of, you need to be able to do that. Otherwise, it becomes a black hole.
Okay, so one of the great things about coming to these events is you learn about a completely new technique or framework. So this is certainly new to me. Might need a little bit more context here in terms of the question. But so the question is, I'd like to know whether anyone on the panel or in the room has used the NAS framework to increase the chance of digital health tech transformation success. So I don't know whether anyone on the panel is familiar with the NAS.
I don't know what the NAS framework is.
No.
Can you elaborate?
Yep.
Same thing.
Yes, it's the options scale, run sustainability of technological framework. So I'm facing the NHS to kind of help tech with into us. Most of them go like in regular in our house used over. Not uncertain. I'm slowly planning to see frameworks while I do you use it? No, well I'm very recently just started studying gold, and so I'm looking to use it to use it. So I just finished to see what does that experience that we help.
Comes.
We're going to invite you to the panel next year so that you can share with us.
What was it called again? Sorry?
NAS?
NAS. How many S's were there?
Yes.
3.
Stream belt. Yeah, cool. Non-adoption, abandonment, and just scale, spread, and sustainability. How do we have?
Big.
That's a reflect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool,
thank
thank
you. And I suppose, but it's very much related to that. I guess, are there any of the frameworks that you have used that you'd be willing to share that with specific one? Any of the frameworks?
So you're quite excited about the 6 enablers of business change, aren't you? We're all a bit excited. So it's quite a few of the things I've talked about today, actually. It's delivered by a gentleman called Kareem Harbot, and he's got a plethora of agile experience and talks about the 6 enablers for business change. And the common pitfall that we all fall into, which is going in and looking straight for ways of working without kind of remembering that there are other things that underpin that. But yeah, definitely worth the read. And there's some impact assessments and things in there as well, which is my bit.
There's also Codurance framework for change, which has got my iceberg is melting. If you want a parable type story, I enjoyed that. I can't say that I've read it at a time where I could have applied all of it, but actually going back I would reflect on it more and apply more of that.
I think at a higher level, I would recommend probably impact mapping and also alignment maps. So this is at an organization level. Again, you're trying to make sure you can align what you're doing from the goal outcome to your activities, and you're collaborating and communicating across your business. So it's not a framework, it's just a tool to use the company.
Actually, we are extracting from a lot of large-scale modernization projects a thing that's called continuous improvement program, and we should be publishing that very soon. After years and years doing very large-scale things, like we found a better way to kind of basically what it tries to do in the same kind of ways of. It's more a ways of work. I don't like the word framework. I think that really banalized, but it's more like a structured way of working where you can just align technical initiatives to business goal, bring all of them together in the same governance model, create the different initiatives, but also not only deliver the technical initiatives, but extract the what we call golden standards, and then find a way to create systemic knowledge. That's why I use that terminology, because that's the one that we use as well. So it's extraction standard, and then there is a very more, how can I say, well-defined way to create systemic knowledge, given the gold standards from the initiatives. But we will be publishing more stuff on that. I have like a lot of material. If some of you are interested, I can show to you. It's still in an embryonic stage, but I can easily show to you.
Right. So, Warren, I might need a little bit more context for you on this, if that's all right. But do you want to just explain or ask your question around UK government and secure by design?
Yeah, of course. So I specialise in applications like security recruitment. I've seen a lot of my clients in the public sector look to the space, try and move towards a secure way and design approach, especially as digital transformation. Zero trust, for instance, so methodology and culture they work towards that implies for information. Different layers of different layers of sort of security fence. Maybe privileged access, but that sort of thing. Now, with that being completed in a month, a lot of organisations that do privileged transformations have a lot of historic processes and it can be a system in place. They do find it hard to deal. So my question to the panel was, how much security at the forefront of that transformation? How feasible is that in delivering?
I suppose on a central government account, it's absolutely mandated. So that has to be one of the first conversations that we have. So it's usually in the design stage. So it's designed by privilege of principle of least privilege. And again, when you come into the architecture, again, using kind of microservices, so that if you can enter one aspect of the development, that you're definitely not going to get through to kind of the final repository. So it's very much embedded, and as you would imagine, working in central government, kind of can't get very much further in design without CISO approval.
That's the most important thing, I think, is just like do it as early as you possibly can. Whatever you do is going to be painful, but like the least painful way to do it is right at the start, because trying to do it right at the end, that's going to be English.
I was going to say, my CISO officer used to describe it like having a baby. It was like, it's a really bad pain at first, but you'll soon forget about it. By the end of it, you'll forget we exist. So we'd absolutely advocate that. Get your CISO officers and your design team together, and your privacy impacts from day one, before you even start.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sandro, I was just going to say, also one thing we've learned, again, with these specialist skills, what you really want to do is rely on an expert. I think we agree on that. Or try to just use it as a service if you can. So again, if you're in cloud, there are solutions there where you can kind of consume it as a service. What you don't want to do is, I've seen this, it's a terrible pattern, do not do this. Somebody going and trying to understand an aspect of security really well and implementing that in a very specific way, and nobody else knows about that, right? And security threats by nature evolve, and if you're not controlling that, first of all, you don't know if this person is around. Second of all, you don't know if it's secure anymore. You don't want to do that. So yeah, you need to rely on robust processes and genuine experts, and don't rely on services rather than trying to do it yourself.
Yeah, and a lot of mistakes that we've seen is, even in the past, we used to call them non-functional requirements. like all those security, scalability, and so on and so forth. And that was a big mistake because as you qualify them as non-functional, they are deprioritized because then you focus on the features, but not on them. So like modern ways of doing, like they are functional requirements, or like some, if you want to distinguish like from a feature, we call them operational requirements. But they are requirements, they go to the same backlog. So for example, in some of our regulated clients, the people from compliance, they are one of the stakeholders. So they need to be there. Investment banks, risk management, people in risk management and compliance, they are part of the stakeholders. So, and then according to their needs and to how we need to align because there is a technical security, like securing your services and with stuff like that. But there is a lot of security that are specific to that industry, like for example, information segregation. Who can see what kind of data? Who can have privileges to each kind of area of the system and stuff? So those are not just normal cloud security.
And even like who can push code to production?
Yeah.
Exactly. So in investment bank, we had a very clear separation between the two. So those things, they need to be treated as functional requirements. They go to the backlog. The teams will work on them, and they will be prioritized against the feature, but they need to be treated as first-class citizens and as early as possible, because trying to retrofit the scalability, security and stuff, it's way too painful. It's much easier to do that.
I call that fragmentation of work, and it applies to everything else, because usually there's a clear divide. I just want these features, and I want the shiny things, basically. They all go together, and you don't want to, again, just create this isolation where you've got separate expert teams also, just kind of like becoming aware of, oh, nice, we want to do a release, let's just do some pen testing. Well, it's too late now, because you need to do that early on. And again, if you try to if you can embed it into your into kind of like a platform that you're building that you can just commonly use, and then that's good. But it cannot just be treated separately.
The more technical ones you can or even automate as part of the pipelines and things like that. The more business related one, then you need to design, you need to implement your system and architect your system in a specific way that you match the compliance requirements, the risk management requirements.
I think it's important to explain the why. So just badging something off as security doesn't give people the context of why this is important. I think that's fundamental to the people who are building the something. And also considering it to be like a key pillar of something that you do as an engineering team. So security isn't this thing that exists outside of our team. Security is everybody's business. So we all care about it in this team. This is the reason why. And bringing those people on that journey will then encourage that group of people to think even wider when they're working on product work. And how can I think about making this more secure? And I think if you can get to the stage where your teams are thinking like that, and that's amazing, that's awesome, because it's not us and them, but it's all of us together to work on this very significant problem that really matters to us who provide this service to our customers. Good take.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, and I think this question hopefully lends itself to a quickish answer. So if there was one experiment you could take away and do tomorrow to improve transformation, what would it be and why?
That's such a good question.
I cannot answer. It would take far more than 5 minutes.
One experiment.
I'd like to do the same transformation journey again, just differently, and see whether trying different things would give a different result, even if it's only in like one specific kind of ecosystem. Because when you go into delivery, it's very hard, I think, to then be able to well, I've experienced this anyway, to innovate, because you're on a clock if you're in project mode. But actually abstracting a section and going, if we'd done this differently, what would have happened? It'd be quite cool, because you've got your playbook of how you did it and then doing it again. I'd love that. So go back in time.
I think piloting for me, but I should caution that. So we have had the experience of kind of like successful and failed pilot schemes, but again, that's about managing your risk, right? So rather than disrupting the whole organization, you try to kind of like demonstrate something that can work, and then you try to then scale it within your organization. So that's usually, at least the cost is lower, even if it fails, right? So, and if it's successful, you enjoy it.
Great. Okay. Well, we're pretty much out of time. So if you could please, if you could just scan the QR code and give us a little bit of feedback and a bit of thing to relay the importance of feedback. But we would really love your thoughts on how today's been, of course, how we can do these events differently and better going forward. I think we've had a brilliant discussion. The panel have covered a huge amount of ground on what is a very big topic over the last 90 minutes. So thank you again for coming today. Just to remind you, you're very, very welcome to stick around. We've got this room for as long as we want. We still have some refreshments. So if you are able to stay, that's great. We'll all be staying too. And please join me in thanking our panel today for their contribution.